What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. So the 2025 draft is starting to take shape, considering the fact that we're almost like halfway through the North American Junior regular seasons, whether that's NCAA, CHL, or USHL, as well as over in Europe. They've played like 20 to 30 games. So we now have obviously a clear top four that I'm really going to spend a lot of time in. Forming the top 10 is starting to form. So I'm going to be giving my updated top 20 for the 2025 draft. Now, when looking at it, I'm going to dive into the top four very shortly. It's up in the air. I'm definitely not set in my ways. Potential changes could for sure happen. I think like in March or April, I'm going to like lock myself in my room for like 72 hours and just watch film of those four guys and come out with who I think is going to be who would be my first overall prospect. But yeah, we're going to go through the top 20 again, clear top four. I'm pretty confident in like my top 9. And then after that, it's kind of like not 10 through 30. You can probably make arguments for people. We're not going to go all the way to 30, but we're doing the top 20. Let's get into it. And at first, we have Matthew Schaefer. For the first time, James Hagens is not my first prospect, which breaks my heart. He's still amazing. He still might end up being the first overall pick. Don't get me wrong. The Long Island native is no longer my number one prospect. But what Matthew Schaefer has done this season, ever since the Hlinka Gretzky Cup, where he was the best player at that tournament by a decent margin, captained Canada to victory, and just to start out this year in the OHL, has been great. He has 22 points in 17 games, missed some games at the start of the season because he had mono. Yes, people might reference the fact that he only had 17 points in 56 games in his draft year, -1. He dealt with a lot off the ice. And again, this guy is not just an offensive defenseman. He is such a complete two-way guy, 6'2", has the physical tools, has the IQ, was amazing at the CHL U.S. national team development 2 games. The first game, he was by far the best player on the ice, in my opinion. He is just that prototypical number one defenseman, I think, at that next level. I think his floor is probably a top 30 defenseman in the NHL. I think he easily could end up being top 10, maybe even top 5, battling with guys like Quinn Hughes, Adam Fox, Cale Makar in 4 to 5 years in terms of being one of the best defensemen in the entire NHL. And also what I love with Matthew Schaefer, he's a September 2nd birthday. If you know about the NHL draft cutoffs, it's September 15th. So he's not only one of the youngest guys in this top 10, he's going to be one of the youngest guys in this draft, point blank, period. And when you look at guys like Porter Martone has a October or November birthday, James Hagens is November. He's like 9 to 10 months younger than these guys. If he was born 2 weeks later, he'd be a 2026 draftee. And obviously, he wouldn't go first overall in 2026 because they got Kevin McKenna. But still, you know what I'm saying? He is still pretty, he's a great prospect, but he still has a lot of developing to do. So right now, I'm going with Matthew Schaefer. I think it also helps that he's a defenseman compared to the other 3 are forwards. So maybe that stands out to me more. But right now, I'm going with Matthew Schaefer as the best prospect in the 2025 draft. Call me crazy. Let me know in the comments. At number 2, I'm still going with James Hagens. People are acting like he's having a brutal season in Boston College, and that is fair because when we're talking about Martone and Misa, they're doing amazing in the CHL, but he still has a very solid 5 goals, 15 assists for 20 points in 15 games. I think we've been desensitized just because Celebrini and Fantilli were so good at the college level. Those are more so outliers. He's very good. He's very good, and he's still shooting like 8%. He's going to score more goals. He is a very good goal scorer. He's kind of been unlucky at Boston College thus far. You look at what he did last year in the USHL, 47 points in 26 games. That's only like Jack Hughes has done that in recent memories at U18s. He broke Nikita Kucherov's all-time points record in the tournament. He is still looking like a potential franchise center. I can see why you'd maybe have him number 4. If you drop him past that, you're absolutely out of your mind. I still think that he is that ideal creative playmaking center that has a pretty underrated shot, and it's definitely being underrated right now, where I think he's going to still turn into around the 90-ish point number 1 center. At number 3, Porter Martone. When looking at him, much like Michael Misa that we're going to get to, monster season to start out this year. 21 goals, 33 assists, 54 points in 27 games right now for Porter Martone. It's ridiculous what this guy is doing. He was very good last year, 33 goals, 38 assists, 71 points, and he is that ideal power forward. If you're the Chicago Blackhawks, you are salivating at the idea of partnering this guy with Connor Bedard on the wing. 6'3", 200 pounds already. Great playmaker. I think his playmaking has really impressed me this season. Not saying he was like solely a sniper last season, but he has really been able to drive a lot of offense for the Brampton Steelheads this season and really round out his game, not just that goal-scoring power forward. He's a guy that can be a legit star and drive his own line on an actual playoff team, I think, down the line. Next up, Michael Misa, no shocker here. And again, putting Misa fourth, I'm not saying he's a distant fourth. You could definitely, if you told me you had him number one, I wouldn't like heavily disagree with you. 1 through 4 is just that close in this draft. And it's going to make for one of the best draft nights, first 4 picks in recent memory, because this guy has 27 goals, 28 assists, 55 points in 27 games right now. That is ridiculous. That is all-time level of production. I think the only guys that did something similar, like goal per game, is like Patrick Kane and Eric Lindros, I think, in their draft year. He's insane. He does everything at a good level. There's no deficiencies in his game. I think that he's going to be a number 1 center. I think he's going to be a stud. I just slightly like Schaefer, Hagens, and Martone more. Slightly. Very slightly. I could definitely understand you having Misa higher, and Misa might, once I really sit down and watch these guys, I think Misa could potentially end up top 3, top 2, maybe even number 1. Next up at number 5, there's no real consensus here. I went with Caleb Desnoyers. I believe I'm pronouncing that right, the French pronunciation, but I think that he is kind of solidifying a case to be that next tier after these 4 guys in that safe 5 through 7 range, considering this guy was a very highly regarded prospect, was the first overall pick in the QMJHL draft, had 56 points in 60 games his first season in the QMJHL, and this year looks like he's taking a sizable step. 15 goals, 22 assists, 37 points in only 24 games. Again, not Martone Misa production. That's why he's a tier below. But as a 6'2" center with the creativity and passing that this guy has, I think he's solidifying himself as a no doubt top 8 prospect, and rightfully so. Maybe not a franchise number 1 center, probably more so a low end number 1. Like if he, I'm trying to think, like he'd be very good with like a Matvei Michkov. Is like Michkov is obviously the best player on that line. He's more so a 2-way guy that still can give you 70 to 75 points ish. Not a star, not a future star, but I think a very, very productive player in his NHL career. Number 6, a guy that just continues to rise, Victor Eklund. I am fully brought in. I was very high on William Eklund. He was my number 3 prospect back in 2021. So I'm going to bet on the bloodline yet again with Victor Eklund, producing against grown men in the second tier Swedish league. I always botch the name. I'm not going to even try it right now. It's like Allsvenska. Botched it right there. I got to get better at that. But he has 15 points in 24 games. For context, Brandseg Nygaard last year of the Detroit Red Wings, they drafted him 15th overall, had 18 points in 41 games, so outproducing him from that perspective. His teammate that we're going to talk about later, Anton Frundell, has been less productive at that second tier level. He's only 5'11", and he is an October birthday, but I just love this guy's overall playmaking and especially his pace and intensity. This guy gives 1,000%. Yes, maybe it might end up in some turnovers or some bad defensive play, but I love this guy's overall motor on top of his skill level and the fact he's producing again against grown men. Fully expect him to translate at the next level, much like his brother has massively the last 2 seasons. Next up, Roger McQueen. A little bit tough. He was in first overall discussions considering the fact his start to the season was so good. 8 goals, 3 assists, 11 points in 8 games. He's been hurt ever since, though. So it's kind of hard to say that he's still rising. Still think that he's a top 10 prospect, no doubt. But until he comes back and we see a little bit more of him, I can't really throw him that much higher. Last year was very productive, 21 goals, 30 assists in 51 points. I believe 53 games, 6'5", 6'6". That's what really jumps off the page. A skill guy, not the most physical guy, but with his stature and his shot, he's going to be a very intriguing prospect in this year's draft class. Hopefully he comes back from injury so we can get some more games. I believe he is coming back from injury, but we got to get more tape on this guy, especially in his draft year. Going to be very interesting. Right now I have him at 7, but he could definitely shoot up if he comes back and absolutely kills it. Frundell, 8th. Biggest question mark in the draft right now. I do not know how to assess this guy because when you watch him play, he's clearly a very special talent, but the production has not nearly lined up with that level of talent that we know that he's capable of. Last year, he had 39 points in 29 games in Swedish juniors. This year, he only has 7 in 10 games and 3 in 7 in the Swedish second tier league. So the production is not even like top 20 level, considering that in the Swedish 20s, under 20s, he's been very good at the international level. He has 11 points in 8 games right now at U18 tournaments for Team Sweden. He just had a hat trick the other day. So I still think that he can be a first-line center. I still think he has, again, just the overall high IQ. When you talk about Anton Frundell, it's definitely more of a high IQ guy than, say, like the physical tools. But I still think that he can be a very, very good NHL player. just the production kind of scares me. Like, how are you not dominating? I know he's dealt with injuries. He started the year out and he got hurt immediately, but you got to be dominating the U20s considering you did it last year. Hopefully he kind of finds his stride very soon, and he should solidify himself yet again as a top 7, top 6 prospect. I still have him at number 8. I still really like him a lot. Malcolm Spence of the Erie Otters, which Matthew Schaefer also plays on. Very talented winger. You look at him last year, 62 points in 66 games. Taking another step, not taking a step like a Martone or Misa, but still taking a big step this season. 15 goals, 20 assists, 35 points in 27 games right now. 6'2", similarly to Victor Eklund, very high pace, very intense player. I think he's going to be NHL ready, maybe more than some of the other guys that are going to go ahead of him. Just that prototypical 6'2" winger. I think he can be an effective 25 and 35 kind of 60-point winger at that next level. Not a franchise piece, but definitely more of a complementary piece. But at 8th through 13th, where he's probably going to go, you're not looking probably for a huge franchise guy. I think that he'd be great with the team that has a young, established center that just continues to grow. Throw him with Malcolm Spence. That's a recipe for success for a rebuild. Jake O'Brien, number 10, definitely a riser for me. Last year, 64 points in 61 games. Very impressive with the Brantford Bulldogs. This year, taking another step. 14 goals this season. Last year, he only had 13, so his goal scoring has really popped to me in terms of taking that next step. 22 assists, 36 points in 29 games. 6'2", a bigger guy. He needs to put on some weight, though, at only 175 pounds right now. But yeah, he just does everything at a very high level. There's really no flaws in this guy's game. Similarly to Malcolm Spence, don't think he's some kind of franchise high potential pick, but a guy that you really would like to have in the late lottery. Next up, a guy that is more of a high potential guy. Radim Murtka, when looking at him, 6'6", already like 215 pounds, from Czechia, defensive stalwart. When looking at him, you're definitely drafting him more for his defensive potential. He's been locked down basically at every single level in terms of his defense. He wasn't producing that much at a high level in the Czechia league, but neither did Adam Juracek in his draft year. He had like 1 point in 19 games. Murtka had 1 point in 10 games. Now he's over in the WHL where he actually has 5 points in his first 7 games. It doesn't blow you out, but if he can be around that pace for the rest of the season, on top of the defensive impact that we know that this guy is capable of, he is that ideal top pair partner for a legit offensive stud defenseman. And he's a June birthday. He's a younger guy, similarly going back to Matthew Schaefer. So for a guy that's a little bit more of a project, he's obviously a prospect. He's very young, pretty raw offensively, but defensively, I think that he's already pretty damn good. So I would not hate a team taking him decently early. If they already have like the Montreal Canadiens, although hopefully David Reinbacher can be that, he'd be an ideal partner for a guy like Lane Hudson down the line, more so of that defensive player. I really like him a lot. Logan Hensler, another righty. Logan Hensler was in talks for the number 1 defenseman before the season because he played very good with the U.S. national development team. Has struggled offensively a bit with Wisconsin. Wisconsin is kind of a pretty shit team, though. He only has 6 points in 15 games after having 32 and 61 with the U.S. national team development program. I think that, yeah, I think he's a very solid prospect, but just does nothing that really pops, nothing that you really go, wow, I think this guy can be a very, very good player at the NHL level. I think his ceiling's probably like a Noah Hannafin at this point, just reliable, two-way, 40 to 45 points. Again, nothing wrong with this guy's game, but you look at a Matthew Schaefer that has really popped in terms of his skating and overall offensive game. Hensler has just kind of stayed the same, and guys have passed him as a result. So I still like Hensler, still definitely top 20, but has fallen off a decent amount. At 13th, we got Lyndon Lakovic. And in his draft year, -1, maybe wasn't as productive as guys like Jake O'Brien or Malcolm Spence, but part of that was Moose Jaw was an absolute wagon, so he got maybe pushed down a little bit in the lineup. They ended up winning the WHL, but this year, he's been awesome for them. Right now, he has 13 goals, 18 assists for 31 points in 26 games. The team is brutal this season. They're one of the worst teams in the entire WHL. They're 6-18-4. That's how bad they are. And Braden Yeager just got traded. So it's really just him and Yeager to start out this season, and he was highly productive. If he continues to be highly productive like he is this year on that bad of a team, I'm really going to be impressed with him. I think he could potentially be top 10 in this year's draft because especially with him, unlike maybe some other guys we mentioned, 6'4", 200 pounds, similar to Porter Martone, is that ideal power forward, complementary piece to an elite center. So yeah, I just like him a lot. He's around in that 13 to 17 range right now, and if he keeps it up, maybe he'll get traded from Moose Jaw. I don't really know, but considering he is young, probably not. He's great. He's awesome. He's definitely come a long way in terms of taking that big step this season. And when you have the physical tool set that this guy has, you're probably going to go in the lottery with that production in that tool set. Next up, Carter Bear. Solid draft year, -1, 57 points in 67 games. This year on Everett, which is an overall offensive wagon. He's not carrying the team by any means, but he has 22 goals, 24 assists, 46 points in 26 games. That is ridiculous. I don't care how good the overall team is. He is the best player on the team right now. Just an elite offensive talent, 6 foot tall, decently physical, not some all skill guy that is kind of soft. He can do it all. He's a damn good potential top 6 forward down the line. I like Carter Bear a decent amount, and rightfully so. He has risen in a lot of people's charts. Next up, Jacob Wozniak. Very productive last year in Swedish juniors. In fact, set the 17-year-old all-time record with 50 points in 36 games. Had a bit of a slow start this year in the Swedish juniors, but is back on track with 28 points in 21 games. And he actually got some SHL run, only scored 1 goal in 4 games. But yeah, this guy's 6'3", 6'4". A little bit more so of a softer player, but he has an absolutely wicked shot that I think will translate to next level. He has fallen off a decent amount in his draft stock. Some people have him in like the 20s. I'm not quite ready to go there quite yet, considering the fact that at his stature, with his shot, I think he's actually a pretty solid skater. Some people have criticized him for that. I think that he has potential to be one of the highest ceilings in this draft, and I'm definitely sticking with him in terms of my overall top 15 as he sits at number 15. And next up, we got Jackson Smith. This guy might be Carter Yakimchuk of this year. 6'3", very good offensively, has 22 points in 27 games right now. Again, similar to Carter Yakimchuk, I think people are going to fall in love with his overall edge work at the blue line. Very nifty and crafty player, despite being 6'3". Wouldn't be surprised if this guy goes top 10. Has been pretty damn good for the Tri-City Americans. Justin Carbonneau, top QMJHL player besides Desnoyers probably this season. When looking at him, 31 goals, 59 points last year in the QMJHL. This year taking a sizable step, 20 goals, 23 assists, 43 points in 29 games. One of the best skaters in the entire draft. That's why he's decently high for me. One of the best skaters. And for me, if you can skate at a high level, you're probably going to play some type of role at the NHL level, especially when you have the goal scoring this guy has had last season, 31 this year, looking like he's probably going to go for around 40, maybe even 45 this season. Skates well. He's around 6 foot, 6'1", and can put the puck in the back of the net. Ideal, good second liner, maybe a low end first line kind of projection for a guy like this. 18, Ivan Ryabkin. This guy is probably the biggest faller of late. I'm keeping him here. I understand why people have him like outside of the first round at this point. When looking at him, he had 58 points in 44 games last year in Russian juniors for Dynamo. Has completely fallen off this season. He's had a really, really weird season. Started out with 8 assists and 9 points in Russian MJHL. Then got scratched. Then said he was going to go to the Muskegon Lumberjacks in the USHL. Now he's back in Russia, has 1 point in his last 5. But when you watch the tape on this guy last year, I refuse to believe it's 18 years old. He lost all of his talent. So it is definitely concerning right now in terms of his development. But I would take him at 18. I take a shot on him. I still think the skill was so evident at the start. He's not Michkov. He's not Demidov. He's not nearly, even coming into the season, he wasn't nearly that kind of talent. But he was just so productive. There might be some serious off-ice stuff in terms of him being able to be coached, but I still think the talent is there. So as a result, I still have him at 18. William Moore, 19. You thought this guy was going to be the U.S. developmental program's #1 center, be a top 12 pick. Hasn't really been the case. Hasn't been that productive. Last year had 43 points in 50 games with the program. This year only 21 and 27. And in fairness, just the U.S. developmental team is kind of shit this year. I'm not going to lie. They got dogged, obviously, by the CHL after losing Eiserman, and Hagens, despite being his draft year, decided to go down the college route, and rightfully so. Well, I think he actually had to, because he was before December 31st. But when looking at it, 6'2", still has all the tools, I think, to be a potential good second liner at the NHL, or second line center at the NHL level. He just needs to find the toolbox. The production has not been there. He has not been able to fully put it together over long stretches of time. There's definitely flashes with this guy. Maybe I'm biased because he's American, but he's definitely slipped. Coming into this season, he was a pretty consensus top 12 guy. As a result, he has slipped because of the lack of production and lack of consistency. As a result, I have him at number 19. And then 20th, I'm going with Joshua Ravensburger. I'm throwing a goalie in there. I'm throwing the 6'5" WHL goalie from Prince George. 907 last year, 901 this year. I'll be honest, I'm not going to act like some kind of sick goalie scout, but this guy is looking like the number one goalie in the class of 2025. Obviously has the physical features of a legit goalie, kind of like a Sebastian Cosa, big ass dude in the WHL. I can't really say much beyond that. He's been pretty productive in the WHL. I know those save percentages don't sound that good, but again, CHL, it's very high scoring. It's not the NHL. You're thinking 901, this guy stinks. Not the case. Joshua Ravensburg at number 20. But here it is, back again. Schaefer, Hagens, Martone, Misa, Desnoyers, Eklund, McQueen, Frundell, Spence, O'Brien, Murtka, Hensler, Lakovic, Bear, Wozniak, Smith, Carbonneau, Ryabkin, Moore, Ravensburger. Let me know in the comments. What do you think about this ranking? Who would you move up? Who would you move down? Who did I absolutely snub? Who should get thrown out of the rankings? And I'll be seeing the next one. Excited for the World Juniors, but we're only going to have maybe 2, maybe 3 players from this in the World Juniors. In Hagens, Schaefer look like locks, Martone TBD. But yeah, I'll be seeing the next one. Top 50 prospects come out next week on my Instagram. I'll start rolling them out, and obviously I'm going to do it on here.